Good morning, Paul McDonald here, Remax Hallmark, GTAagent.com. This morning I'm going to visit the decommissioned Unilever plant, soon to be Toronto's East Harbour, which is a 64-acre site. It's going to be comprised of about 24 buildings with a maximum density of 45 stories each. It's also been approved for the subway station for the downtown relief line, and we're going to go check it out.
So the question is the connections about what's happening here to the renaturalization of the Don River. So that the Don Naturalization Project is it's first and foremost about flood protection. So this site and most of the Portlands is in the floodplain of the Don River, and the naturalization of the Lower Don is the result of an environmental assessment about how to flood protect this area. So implementation of that river naturalization is critically important to allowing this project to happen, as well as everything that's happening to the south in the Portlands. So it's a functionally very important, but it also, if you're familiar with the project, creates several acres of green space, and it's an amazing new piece of infrastructure for the city, and we are very excited about that. And so as you look at the design of what we're proposing, we sort of have a green edge along the west and southwest of our property that's meant to try to create a connection, a naturalized connection between what's happening here and the more urban environment that we're going to create primarily on this property, with the naturalization that's happening to the southwest. Another important thing to note, and while we're here, it's the best place to talk about it. Our property actually includes part of the naturalization project. So along the west edge of our property, we need to create what they call a flood protection landform, which is essentially a berm, like an earth berm that we built along our west edge that creates part of that flood protection for this part of the city, and it's part of that broader river naturalization project. And one of the things that we want to do as part of that project is it shouldn't feel like a piece of infrastructure. It should feel like park. So we're going to, landscape it and make it look really nice, and it'll be a place to hang out, not just a piece of flood protection infrastructure.
I had a hard time finding it.
So the heart of the transit hub is to have those GO trains stop in this location. There's a new station that's going to be built here. It's part of the City of Toronto Smart Track proposal, one of the 6 new stations that's being built in the city to better access the GO train system for people who are living and working in Toronto, as opposed to just having it as a commuter system for people coming from outside to downtown. So it's something we're very excited about. One of the interesting aspects of the project, of the transit hub, is it actually also creates a bridge across the river. So the reason I wanted to stop here is the rail bridge just over here that crosses the Don Valley Parkway and the river. The station will actually create pedestrian and cycling connections across the river using the bridge to allow access to the station for people on the west side of the river, but also for just people that want to walk or take their bike across the river in another location. So it's helping to remove some of the existing barriers that exist today. So there'll be a number of entrances to the transit station, and one of them will be in just beside Corktown Common on the other side of the river. So it'll be connected to the Dawn Trail. You can come down the Dawn Trail, and on either side of the tracks you can get up and access the trains by walking across new bridges, new pedestrian bridges. And one of the other reasons that bridge is really important is part of it will be a multi-use path. So if you're using your bike on the trail and you want to come here, whether you're commuting to work or just coming here to go to a restaurant, you can use the Dawn Trail, take your bike across the multi-use path bridge and locate right here as part of the East Harbour redevelopment. And so the city is going to extend Broadview south. It'll dip under the train tracks, and it'll be on a diagonal. It'll shoot all the way right through this building, through where the white warehouse building currently sits, intersect at Lakeshore, and then eventually we'll continue down into the Portland as one of the main streets, the north-south streets that connect the Portlands to the city. And again, the streetcar is an important element to that. So Broadview will end up being our main street. A lot of the main office buildings will have their addresses on Broadview, and retail and other streets. It'll be sort of that urban core of this whole development. A lot of the stuff is oriented around Broadview. The other part is the taller buildings. In terms of the way we're massing the site, the taller buildings are going to be located close to the transit hub and along Broadview Avenue. And then as we go south and as we go east, the buildings will get shorter, recognizing that there's existing communities to the northeast. And so the smaller scale buildings will be up in that corner, and as you head down towards Lakeshore, the taller buildings will be generally located where we're standing today. And one of the great things about the site and the infrastructure that's around us is we don't really have neighbors. So in terms of shadow and some of the things that often community have issues with, we're really not impacting any existing communities, which is great. Up to Eastern Avenue up there. And then you may be able to see the heritage buildings a little bit better. That's the farthest building is the corner of Eastern Avenue and Booth, so that's sort of the northeastern edge of the property. And then, so we own all the lands behind us as well. All the cars and trucks that you see parked behind this more empty parking lot, that's the city works yard. And so the overall master plan area goes to the other side of where those buildings are on Booth Avenue. And then there's a big gray building that you can see back over my shoulder here. That's the Cinespace Film Studio. We also own that property. That fronts onto Booth Avenue as well. So just to give you a sense of how far east the redevelopment area goes. So this is the extent of the old Unilever property. The big warehouse that you see was where they stored most of the finished goods after they were finished. And currently that space is actually leased to the TTC. They store streetcar parts there, but eventually that will be part of the redevelopment area as well. So this is the south boundary of our property, and so I want to just point out a couple things. One, you can get a better view of the Cinespace Film Studio to your left. And so again, the property, the master plan area goes to the other side of that building onto Booth Avenue. So as you look south, this is another property owned by the City of Toronto, and it's referred to as the Keating Rail Yard. So there used to be a number of tracks in this location, and it was a shunting yard, and it was the main line running into the Portlands. Today it's used to bring chlorine from the main Union Station rail corridor to Ashbridges Bay, and it serves a couple of other tenants in the port. So we're currently working to try to figure out how to manage the redevelopment of this major urban destination with sort of a legacy industrial use. So there's a number of options that we're looking at, including trying to find another location to put that rail line so that we can have the development go all the way down in front onto Lakeshore in a more urban setting. And we're also working very closely with the city because the city wants to extend the green corridor. So those of you who are familiar with this area, that there's a pretty wide green corridor to the east of here on the north side of Lakeshore, which was created when they ripped down the other section of the Gardiner further east. So they want to be able to extend that green corridor along Lakeshore all the way to Don Roadway, and so that's going to be part of this of the redevelopment. And so it's really trying to understand, when you factor in that infrastructure, both the green corridor, the Martin Goodman Trail, and the rail, how much of what you see to the south can be incorporated into future development and how much is required for city infrastructure. But we do hope that there'll be a really nice urban interface onto Lakeshore, as opposed to having this sort of no man's land from where our property ends down to where the street ends. And because the ramps are being removed, Lakeshore is going to be completely rebuilt. So there's an opportunity to reconfigure that area and make it much nicer for people that are not in vehicles.